afternoon, my conscious co-creators. Welcome to another edition of the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. I am very, very pleased that you are all here with me today. We've got another one of those shows, those special shows where it's just you and me. Um, so I really hope that you'll comment on the live streams, put your questions, your comments in, so that we can have a conversation between you and me instead of with a guest. Last week, if anybody tried to tune in, you noticed we did do a rerun last week. Unfortunately, my guest last week canceled at the last minute, and just was coming off of a training and just didn't have the mental capacity to put together a show at the last minute. So we reran one of my favorite shows, which was my interview with the author Paul Levy, all about his book on quantum mechanics. And really a wonderful, wonderful show. If you missed that, if you missed the original airing or the rerun, go to talkradio.nyc under the Conscious Consultant Hour and check it out. It's a really good episode. Okay, so for today, of course, we're going to start off with a blog post, even though it's just me and you. And today's blog post actually it kind of relates to the topic today, which I'll get to in a moment. But today's blog post is entitled, "To heal our pain, we must be willing to feel what we haven't felt before." Most of us know what our challenges are. The stories of our life are conscious. Those memories are still vivid, if not fresh. We work on those issues, yet they still trigger us. As we walk on this path of healing, we think that once we talk about our stories, we will be better. Yet somehow we are not. The same triggers still haunt us. And we fall into the same emotional traps we always have. Why is that? What more do we need to do to change our patterns and move forward in our lives? The key to really breaking those patterns comes when we understand that we can't think our way out of our pain. Releasing those stories and the experiences that they generate come not from the mind, for the images and the feelings are not stuck in the brain. Our nervous system, our body, our hearts still carry that energy. The weight of the pain we felt and the trauma of those situations is lodged in the very cells of our body. We forget that we are more than a brain and a mind. We are also a heart. We are also our heart, our body, and our spirit as well. To break these patterns and these cycles of unwanted behavior, we must first release the energy that is stuck in our bodies. In other words, we have to feel our way through, not think our way through. It is not enough to simply remember the incidences and think about them. We have to listen to our bodies and feel those feelings that we have avoided and suppressed for so many years. This can be difficult work. More than that, it can be very scary because it requires us to do what we have never done before, to feel what we don't want to feel: the pain, the shame, the betrayal, the abandonment, the fear. We are usually pretty good at feeling the good feeling emotions: joy, excitement, gratitude, appreciation, love. Yet feeling the uncomfortable feelings is equally helpful. Helpful because those feelings show us where we are. They show us where we need to change, and they show us where we need to forgive and let go. Or they show us where to be kinder to ourselves and to others. Reaching deep down and accessing those feelings is not for the faint of heart. Doing it on our own can also be very challenging. Seeking out a guide or a therapist to support us and guide us through the process is one of the best things we can do. Find support from our community. Finding support from our community is also helpful. The important thing to keep in mind is that we don't have to do it all on our own. We can get help and support, if not from a trained professional, at least from an experienced guide. The key is that we have to be willing to go where we haven't been willing to go before, to feel what we haven't been willing to feel before, and to experience what we haven't been willing to experience before. Are you ready to dive in deep? Are you willing to feel the pain once again so you can let it go? So, as with most of my blog posts, I'm really writing this one to myself because this is something that I've experienced, that my wife, who's a therapist, has pointed out to me many times. And in working with people, I've seen it and had to guide them themselves with this. And I am like most people. I don't like going into those uncomfortable feelings. I don't like going into my pain, my shame, my guilt. Yet it's only when I do that I make more room, that I release the energy, that I am able to really process and and release the hold and the grip those feelings have over me. And believe me, I know all my traumas. I know the experiences I've had in life. I know, a lot of the things that cause me challenges in my life. I know it. It's conscious. It's up here. But have I felt it? Have I fully gone in and released that energy? I'm still working on it. I'm still a work in progress, just like everyone else. I can remember 11 years ago, a little over 11 years ago, when I did my first ceremony with a facilitator, and all these images and things came up from an earlier part of my life that was very traumatic for me. And I was kind of confused at first. I was like, I know all this. I've worked on this. I've done energy healing on it. I've processed it. Why is it coming up now? But the thing that was different that night is I actually started to feel it. I felt the pain. I felt the energy I was holding on to. And it was, I was jittery. I was like, oh, it was intense. And what happened was by the end of the night, when I guess I had released all the energy I was ready to release around that situation, because I've had many ceremonies since then that still I was releasing energy around it. But by the end of the night, I felt like I had had this 1,000-pound weight on my shoulder that I finally dropped. And I didn't even know I was carrying it. I didn't even know it was there. And so that experience, it showed me so much about myself. And it showed me quite a lot about what it means to truly heal. And even though I felt it, and even though I understood the whole process. Still, I'm a kind of an intellectual guy. I live in my mind like most people. So there are lots of times where I don't go back and feel things until I'm really put in the position and forced to feel it, till I dive in, until I intentionally do that work. And so when I wrote this blog post a couple of years ago, it was both after me having another ceremony where I really had to feel things, as well as helping others and realizing that like so many people in the group were up in their heads and talking about what had happened to them, but they weren't feeling what happened to them. So that energy was still there. It was still stuck inside of them. It was still in controlling them. Now, look, I am not saying we have to marinate in our pain. I'm not saying we have to live inside our wounds. The point of bringing up the feelings, bringing up the emotions, crying, yelling, screaming, feeling the pain is to release it. It's to allow that stuckness inside of us to come out and let go. And look, I know I still have plenty to let go, but I know the experience now. I've helped others with the experience. My wife and I, when we do our groups, it's one of the important things is guiding people back to their body and back to the feelings. Because in this society, in this world, we just don't feel enough. We don't. Whether you're a man or a woman does not matter. Women feel a lot more than men, but these days, a lot of women are not feeling their feelings. They're very much in their masculine aspect. They're very much, I've got things to do, my family to take care of, my job, my this, that. The society doesn't give us space to just feel, to just be with our emotions, to just be with whatever is for us. So it really does take intention. And it's very, very helpful to work with a guide, a coach, a therapist, an analyst, whatever flavor you that appeals to you most. But ultimately, the whole point of diving in deep to these uncomfortable places is so we can be free. Not free that they no longer live within us. They still live within us, but so that they don't have control over us. So that when we make a choice, when we make a decision, when we show up, we can show up from a more authentic place. We can show up from a more true place for ourselves. And when we do that, then we notice things shift. I mean, it's so interesting to me how when we shift things inside of ourselves, things start to shift around us. People shift, situations shift. We talk about doing the inner work. I talk about doing the inner work all the time. The inner work and the outer work are the same thing. There is no difference between our inner world and our outer world. The outer world is merely a reflection of what's going on inside of us. So if there's something unpleasant in your outer world, it's time to look in. It's time to go to those places that are uncomfortable, that don't feel good. We have to feel our way through this process, not think our way through this process. My wife, I've mentioned her many times on the show. She's a somatic therapist. She does EMDR and other kinds of somatic therapies. And she has said for years, she said, talk therapy can be helpful, but it's very limited. You need to get to the body. You need to get to the feelings. You need to get to those uncomfortable places. And just talking about it does a little bit. It doesn't do a lot. So this week, my blog, it's a call to do that uncomfortable work. And look, I know it's not easy. I've been doing this work now been doing the ceremonial work for 11 years. I've been doing personal development work for probably 20 years. It ain't easy. I get it. That's why you want to work with someone who's compassionate, who's done their own work. Look, none of us is perfect. None of us has completely finished our work. It's lifelong work, but it's the most rewarding endeavor we can ever engage in. So if you're hearing this, if you're listening to this episode, if there's some little piece of this that resonates with you, maybe it's a call for you to dive in and feel a little bit more what you have been shy about feeling in the past. I know I've been there. So that's our blog post for this week. It's entitled, To Heal Our Pain, We Must Be Willing to Feel What We Haven't Felt Before. And of course, you can always find my blog at my personally branded website, theconsciousconsultant.com. And of course, on the Talk Radio website as well at talkradio.nyc/blog. All right, so we're going to go to break. And when we come back, we're going to dive into our topic for today, which is how idealism is not ideal. And this is a very personal topic for me. And I chose this topic because it's something that came up recently and is very present for me personally right now. So please stay tuned. We'll be right back. You are listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, and we do this every Thursday, 12 noon to 1 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on talkradio.nyc, and we'll be right back to get into our main topic of the day. Idealism is not ideal.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Broncu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
And welcome back to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. This week, it's just me and you. So please, if you're listening live, please comment on the live stream. Let me know what you think about what we're talking about this week. And yeah, ask questions, comments. Happy to get to all of them as I can. So My topic this week is that idealism is not ideal. What do I mean by that? Well, let me start off with explaining why this topic kind of came to be and why it's sort of in present in my consciousness right now. And then I'll kind of go through how it's been present in my own life and the meaning I'm trying to make now from it. So I had a training a couple of weeks ago with my teacher Armand, who was a brilliant man. And he was using the movie Camelot, the 1967 version of Camelot with Richard Harris and Vanessa Redgrave as an example. And we were talking sort of this cycle, we're talking all about the masculine wound and he was talking a lot about Lancelot and King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and Mordred and the whole story of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. But there was one little thing he said that really struck a chord in me. And he said it was Arthur's idealism that doomed Camelot to failure. And I was like, whoa, whoa. And that, for some reason, it just really resonated with me. It just, maybe I was finally ready to hear that. Because when I was a kid, King Arthur was one of my favorite fairy tales, one of my favorite stories. And King Arthur's idealism, the idea of a round table where no one is more important than anyone else and bringing all the knights together and working together, it always appealed to me. And so when he said that and went on and talked about other things, so he didn't spend a lot of time on that, but I sat with that during the evening. And I felt, I guess, a real ring of truth in that. Now, what do we mean by idealism? What do we mean by someone being idealistic? Idealism is about holding to a higher standard. It's about looking at a reality, something to live up to, not necessarily where we are. Sort of the idea that, things can be better than they are. And it's not that idealism is bad. Please don't take this the wrong way. I'm not bashing idealism. I'm not saying, no, nobody should be idealistic. But it's when the idealism is ungrounded or is not tempered, it takes us away from reality. It takes us away from what's right in front of us. And so what unfolded for me throughout that night, I guess, were many points in my life, many difficulties I experienced in life because I was being too idealistic and not grounded in the reality around me. And that really struck me very hard. And there was a lot of pain and sadness over this because I realized that a lot of the challenges I had been through ended up being of my own making. Now, I'm not saying I could have done any different or any better, but it was that idealistic side of me that wanted to believe so badly that things were better than they are that I couldn't see things the way they actually were. And that's what caused me a lot of suffering. And that's why I say idealism is not ideal. Because when I hold this ideal, oh, that things are going to work out and things are going to be great and we're going to be wonderful together and this and that. And we're not seeing the reality of the situation, of the way people are, of the way the world is, of the way society is, then we're headed for trouble. And then just like King Arthur, who couldn't see that Mordred was going to destroy the round table and kept him in there. Again, in this movie's particular version of it, how he couldn't see what was going on with Lancelot and Guinevere until it was too late. How he wanted to believe that they could be better, but they weren't. They were still human. That when we see the world through rose-colored glasses, then we're not seeing things clearly. There's that tint on it. And it's kind of funny because in high school, because I was a very optimistic person, people used to say, oh, there's Sam with the rose-colored glasses. And I eventually got a pair of tinted glasses. They were kind of purplish rose-colored. So I literally saw the world through rose-colored glasses. Now, the thing is to see this in ourselves can be very challenging. It can be difficult because when we stop seeing ourselves through this idealistic lens and we see ourselves through a more grounded, a more clear, a more present lens, sometimes those things we see are not so great and so wonderful, and we can not feel so good about ourselves because of it. And so for me, it really shook me. This whole lesson, this whole thing really shook me on the inside because, like I said, I was the one who really created the situations that caused a lot of pain for myself because I wasn't seeing things clearly. And because I wasn't seeing things clearly, I made choices that were not in my own best interest, that were not grounded choices. So that's why idealism is not ideal, because it takes us away from the here and now. It takes us away from being able to make the choices that really serve us and support us and create a life for us where we can really thrive. All right. So this is our start of talking about how idealism is not ideal. And I'm going to talk about sort of, you know, some of the things around it a little bit more. Maybe I'll tell another little story, but it's also my goal is to get to the place where I'm working towards now, which is not how to counteract the idealism, but how do we temper the idealism so that we still have our dreams, we still have that vision of how things could be, but we recognize how things actually are first. All right. So we're going to take a quick break. Again, if you have any questions, any thoughts, any ideas around this, please comment in the comment sections below the video. And when we come back, we're going to talk about how taking idealism in other ways doesn't truly serve us and how it can hinder us in some ways and what we can do about it. All right. So, everyone, please stay tuned. You're listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, and we'll be right back in just a moment.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Linda Marsanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
And welcome back to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. We're talking this hour about how maybe idealism isn't so ideal. And so I talked about how my own idealism in my life kind of caused me to make some really bad decisions that didn't really serve me. And this is something that's very common, how when we idealize the world, when we idealize people, when we idealize ourselves, we're disconnected from reality. We're disconnected from the way things really are. And let's just look for a moment, like how that works with ourselves. Like when we see ourselves better than we actually are, what happens? Then we show up and we think we're stronger, we think we're smarter, we think we're better, we think we can handle something we can't. And then we don't handle it because we didn't see things clearly. And that leads to disappointment. We judge ourselves. We avoid dealing with things. We feel shame and guilt over the situation that we got ourselves into. And in the end, it's really, it causes us a lot of pain. And I don't want to say mistakes because I really feel mistakes are not a bad thing. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. But when we over-idealize ourselves and what we're capable of, and we over-idealize others and what they're capable of, and how they're showing up, that disconnection from reality, that separation from the way things truly are, it always leads to trouble, at least in my life. I mean, I don't know about you. I don't know your personal life and your situation, but I just know in my own life, whenever I've done that, it has always led to trouble. And this idealism around ourselves, it can show up in a lot of different ways. It can show up with this idea of we have to be perfect. And then we get neurotic about being perfect about every little thing. I mean, like almost leading to OCD because we think like, oh, if everything is perfect, then I'm good. Then I'm living up to this ideal. Whereas really, that's just about control because we don't feel safe because of some trauma that we've experienced. And so again, when we're separating ourselves from the reality of why we're doing the things that we're doing and what we're capable of, it really it really doesn't serve us. And it was quite interesting. One of the things I idealized that didn't work out in the past. And it's so funny because it had just come up that night as this being sort of one of these touch points in my life where my idealism, I mean, luckily I didn't get too involved, but my idealism really led to disappointment. And what's really interesting about it is it was around this whole idea that was generated by this author back in the 90s. And somebody recently wrote an article about him and 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 he had interviewed me for this article and he sent me the link to it and I just read it yesterday. So this is really fresh for me. But this gentleman by the name of Marshall T. Savage wrote a book called The Millennial Foundation or The Millennial Project, TMP, The Millennial Project. 8 Easy Steps Towards Colonizing the Universe. And it was this really well thought out plan for how to achieve space exploration in a sustainable, environmentally friendly way and the steps needed to do it. And he talked about, we don't know what it's like to be colonists. I know that that word has a bad connotation these days, but we don't know what it's like to be explorers anymore. And so we need to sort of create an environment of being explorers before we go out and explore space. But his ideas really touched the hearts of many people who were in the pro space exploration movement. And he had these ideas and of creating sort of a floating um, colony in the ocean as a stepping stone towards then creating something in space, just to create a semi-enclosed environment that would be practiced for then living in a fully enclosed environment in space. And it really ignited the imaginations of many people, myself included. And we started to try and create a way of how do we do this? And this gentleman by the name of Gal, he even came up with an intermediate step was, well, why don't we learn how to live together in a way, like in a co-housing way, um, and learn how to become self-sufficient in this community. And he had bought this piece of land out in Texas, and a few people were going to move out there and live there, and it was close to a place where a city was near Austin, on the outskirts of Austin, and we were going to do all this. And I was part of it. And I was like, look, my job is here. My everything is here for me. I can't commit to moving out there right away, but I want to help. I'll help you. I'll come out there with you. I'll show up once a year, twice a year to support it. And I was really very enthusiastic about it. Like I saw like, oh, this could be really cool. And what happened? I remember the month that people were supposed to move out and start trying to do this. There were like four people, and one by one they started to drop out, except for one guy, Richard Cruz. And it ended up never happening. It ended up never going anywhere. There ended up because there started to be a lot of chapters around this idea, organization, and things went not the way Marshall wanted. And so he removed himself from it. And eventually, within a couple of years, it all fell apart and never really went anywhere. And again, I didn't move out there. I didn't really put myself in a position where by things not working out that it would really hurt me. But at the time, it was like, oh, seeing the possibilities and like, I may not make it out to space, but this can be a step in that direction. And my idealism kind of taking over. And when things fell apart, the disappointment and the bitterness and the like, oh, why didn't these people live up to their commitments and this and that? And there were all these emotions that came up. And I put a lot of time into this. I used to host meetings in my apartment, used to get together with people and we talk about it and we come up with strategies and plans and worked on business plans. Just but you have no idea how much effort we put into this to then have it just kind of all fall apart. It felt like a betrayal. So what does this have to do with idealism? Because I was seeing the ideal. I was seeing everyone as living up to their word and doing all this and not seeing the grounded reality of what was the reality of this actually taking off of people actually living up to their commitments. Have we ever done anything like this before? Had we gotten people to make like small commitments before we got them to make the big commitment? Now looking back on it, I mean, I'm older, I'm wiser, I'm more experienced. I would approach things totally differently if I were to do it now. But again, it was a lesson for me in how my idealism, not seeing the possibility how this could fall apart, really led to a lot of disappointment. And that's one of the things about idealism. And not just disappointment, but it can lead to anger, it can lead to blaming, it can lead to all kinds of things. Because when we're not grounded in reality, when we're not seeing the way things truly are, most of the time things just don't work out the way we expect, the way we want. So again, this is another point. And there were many points throughout that evening where this lesson kind of came to me. Many points throughout my life. There was a real estate project I was involved in that I lost my shirt on because I wasn't being realistic about my own abilities and about the market and about what was going on and about the people I was with, doing it with. When we hold up to this overly optimistic ideal and we're not grounded in the reality, we can lose a lot of money, we can lose a lot of time, a lot of energy. It can lead to a lot of disappointment, failure, hopefully not things too much more serious, but a lot of pain and trauma. So because this lesson came in so strongly that night, I felt that this was the appropriate topic to talk about this month on this show without a guest, just me and you. And again, I really want to emphasize, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have ideals. I'm not saying that we shouldn't nurture that side of us that is idealistic. But we want to balance that idealism with how things truly are in life. That it's only by achieving that balance that we can really make decisions that truly, truly serve us and work out for the best. Doesn't mean we have to be pessimists. Doesn't mean we have to assume everything's not going to work out. But maybe, just maybe, we need to temper that idealism just a wee bit. All right. So when we come back, we're going to talk about what do we really need to do to temper that idealism? What would really help us to see things more clearly? I keep talking about being grounded, seeing the reality. How do we do that? especially if you're a fellow idealist like me, where that's not your inclination. How do we learn to not judge our idealism, but still see the reality of what the truth is in front of us? And so we'll do that in just a minute when we come back. You are listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour. I hope you're enjoying this show. If I'm touching upon something that's ringing true for yourself, I would love to hear about it. So please comment on the live streams. If you're listening live, let me know, and we will be right back in just a moment.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Ready to serve up success with a splash? Hi, I'm Bruce Kramer, a.k.a. the Corporate Cockroach.
I'm the Renaissance woman, Angie Snowball.
And I'm your strategy doctor, Dr. Navtej Desange, inviting you to serving up success with a splash.
Join us as we shake things up with real talk and real strategies centered around awareness, action, and accountability.
And yes, there really is a cocktail involved. Please join us and sip your way to success.
Serving up success with a splash, where wisdom meets happy hours. Cheers!
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 You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
And welcome back to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. Well, it's been quite a journey today. Talking all about how idealism is not ideal. I've been sharing some personal stories and kind of telling you my experience. And so I've been talking a lot about how it's important to see things the way they actually are and not the way we would like them to be. And you know, it's easy to say that, but what do we do? How do we stop being overly idealistic? How do we start to be more grounded so that our idealism doesn't cause us to make bad choices and bad decisions? So there are a couple of things. And so first, I really, again, want to emphasize that I'm not bashing idealism, that I'm not saying we should never be idealistic, that we should never see things, the possibility of things. It's not the point. The point is we don't want to use idealism to bypass the reality of the way things actually are. Because instead of seeing the world as we want it to be, we see the world as it actually is. Then we truly know what we need to do to move it in the direction that we want it to go. And so this episode is really a call for everyone listening to look at your own worldviews, to look at how you view other people, the world around you, society, family and friends, coworkers, your business, your career? And where are you idealizing things? Where are you making things better than they actually are? And so, how do we shift this? How do we shift this idealistic mindset into one that's a little more grounded in reality? So, the first thing is we have to feel safe to be here now. We have to practice being here now. We have to learn what it means to truly embody this physical vehicle we have and feel what is in our own body. Because as long as we do not feel safe to be here, we're not going to see the way things truly are. So we need to cultivate that internal feeling of safety first. And so to do that, it kind of goes back to my blog post at the beginning of the show about feeling the pain, feeling the sorrow, feeling the sadness, feeling the anguish, so that those energies no longer have a hold on us. And then once we do that, we can truly be present. Take a breath, give it some space. How can we be present when we're constantly rushing and distracted and going from one thing to another to another? So let's just say we want to be more realistic about a coworker, somebody who we work with, and we rely on them to handle certain tasks and we do other tasks in the business. Are we seeing them clearly? Like, are there any red flags coming up that we're not seeing? I remember I worked with a woman once where before I had sort of graduated and had started doing my own ceremonies, she was leading a certain kind of ceremony and she wanted to work with me. And I thought, oh, this is a great opportunity. Even though I'm haven't fully finished training, I can work with her and start to co-lead things. And because it was giving me what I wanted at the time, and there were these red flags that came up, like how she would talk about the clients and all the bad things they did. And she would in some ways make herself a victim. And a lot of little things like this that I didn't quite notice that eventually got me in trouble. I didn't see how unstable she was at the time. And I didn't see that she hadn't really been doing her own work. And eventually there was a blow up and she caused some trouble for me. And it was a shock to me. I was surprised because I didn't see the reality, the realistic of who she was and how she was being. So the first question is, think about the people involved in whatever, whether it's a hobby, a business, family life, a relationship. Take the emotion out of it for a moment and ask yourself, how is the person truly being? How do they show up in the world? Look at the details. Are they on time for meetings? How do they talk about themselves and others? What is their energy like when they show up? You know, how do they show up when there are challenges, when things don't go their way? If you really want to know a person's character, observe how they show up when things don't go the way they want. That's when you truly see a person's character, not when everything is going fine and honky-dory. When there's a problem, how do they show up? So first ask, how are they really? And then, how is the world really? How is society? How is the world at large? Take the personal aspect out of it. And in order to not fall into sort of the negative and the cynicism and the, oh, everything is wrong. I can't believe it's all this way. How come it's not different? See what you can find that's real that you can appreciate. Like, look at what ain't so good, but look at also what's good. It's about being balanced. It's not about only seeing the negative side. It's not about just seeing all the way that things can go wrong. It's seeing the way things can go wrong and seeing the way things can go right. If you truly want to be an idealist who gets things done, then you have to see the way things really are. And when you look at how things really are, then you can ask yourself those questions. Like, what can I do to make things better? Because when you see things, how things truly are, not how we wish them to be, then we can see like maybe things aren't quite as good as we would want. Now we can ask ourselves, what can we do to change? What can we do to make a shift? What can we do to make things better? And ultimately, saying idealism is not ideal. It's about looking at what are we holding on to? What kind of rose-colored glasses are we wearing that if we were to take them off and see things truly clearly, without any tint, without the infraction of wanting things to be a certain way, when we see things how they truly are, then we can make a choice from an empowered place. Then we can make decisions that are realistic, that serve us, and can actually move us towards the goal we want to go to, and not keep us stuck in a fantasy or keep us stuck in the cynicism of how things are. The great part about idealism is it can move us forward to make things better. As long as we have both feet on the ground and we're willing to see things as they are and not how we want them to be. And that, my friends, is my work. And that is why I decided to do a show about this topic this week. So please let me know what you think. Share your thoughts, your ideas. And listen, if you would love for me to discuss any particular topics in the future that are of specific interest to you, you can always email me at sam@theconsciousconsultant.com. And I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your feedback. I'd love to know what I could do to improve and how you see me. And what's the realistic, non-ideal opportunity here for us to move forward together. So thank you all for tuning in. I so appreciate you all. Thank you, my loyal listeners. Please stay tuned later today, 5 p.m. It's Frank Harrison and his show, Frank About Health, followed by those trio of mad people with Serving Up Success with a Splash at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. No live shows tomorrow for July 4th. Tommy gets the day off, so Philanthropy and Focus will return next week. Enjoy your 4th of July. Enjoy the holiday weekend. I hope you all are doing well. Take care. We will talk to you all next week.